The application of a learning framework. We want to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land we are all meeting today. We pay our respects to the elders past, present, and emerging for all nations across Australia. We recognise that their enduring connection to the land, waters, and culture, may we continue to learn and grow together with respect and understanding. Today, these are our areas of discussion: the learning scenario and the learning theory associated with the scenario, how the identified learning theory can address the learning issue in the scenario, examples of ways the learning theory can address the issue, and the practical ideas that utilize the learning theory that can be applied in a learning setting. Here is our learning scenario. Emily is a high school student at Pines Middle School with a secret crush on a boy named Jordan. Her best friend Samantha is the only one who knows about her feelings. As the bell rings, signalling just 5 minutes to transition between classes, the two girls rush down the hallway to their next class, English, taught by Mr. Robertson. Mr. Robertson is known for his strict classroom rules and no nonsense attitude. Emily finds her seat and starts working on the problem of the day. Her nerves tingling with anticipation, Samantha hurries over to Emily and discreetly hands her a folded note. Emily, hoping Mr. Robertson isn't watching, quickly opens the note to read it. To her dismay, Mr. Robertson walks over, takes the note from her hands, and heads to the front of the class. Without a word, he begins to read it aloud, revealing Emily's private confession about her feelings for Jordan and her desire to ask him out. The classroom erupts in whispers, and Emily's face flushes with embarrassment, especially as she notices Jordan's friends in the class. Feeling overwhelmed, Emily bolts out of the classroom and rushes to the bathroom, tears streaming down her face. The atmosphere in the classroom grows tense. The teacher's strict management style and lack of empathy for Emily's situation create a stifling environment. Emily, feeling humiliated and anxious, decides that she can no longer attend Mr. Robertson's class. In response to the incident, Mr. Robertson has requested a meeting with Emily's parents to discuss her behaviour and the situation, leaving Emily feeling even more anxious and distressed. How could Mr. Robertson have better addressed the situation? Scan the QR code to add your response here. Here is our learning theory, classical conditioning. It focuses on the learning of involuntary emotional or psychological responses such as fear, increased muscle tension, salivation, or sweating. In the scenario with Emily, classical conditioning helps to explain how she may develop a conditional response to certain stimuli following her distressing experience. Here are some multiple choice questions for you to have a go at. Pause the video to read the Did You Know fact to answer the questions. Once you unpause the video, you will reveal the correct answer in green.
So we now know what classical conditioning is. So how might we see it in the case study? Once Mr. Robinson read the note out, Emily was fearful she wouldn't be able to hold back her tears in front of the class, so she ran out of the classroom to the bathroom. She felt mortified and was unsure how she would face her classmates again, so she rang her mum to come and pick her up from school, stating that she was unwell. Emily's automatic response to the way Mr. Robinson read aloud to the class the note Samantha had written about Emily having a crush on Jordan is Emily's classical conditioning. Another example is the next day Emily begins to get ready for school, but as soon as she remembers about the incident in Mr. Robinson's classroom the day before, she begins to feel ill, her stomach begins to hurt, and her body begins to sweat. These feelings and emotions that Emily experienced was her automatic response to the incident, also known as classical conditioning. Applied behavior analysis is the application of behavioral learning principles to understand and change behavior. It is also known as behavior modification. Margetts 2023. An assessment is conducted to identify where, when, and the likely reason for the behaviour. Margetts 2023. If we look at the case study, we can determine that the behaviour occurred at school in Mr. Robinson's classroom after walking in from the students' lockers. Now, looking at the likely reason for the behaviour, we have to look at what caused Emily to feel the way that she did. Samantha had written a note to Emily during class time and passed it to Ethan to pass to Emily. This has not only disrupted Emily and Samantha from doing their assigned work, but Ethan as well. If Samantha had waited until the end of Mr. Robinson's class to tell Emily what Jordan had said, Emily would never have been embarrassed in front of the class. Not excusing the behaviour of Mr. Robinson, as Mr. Robinson is the adult and teacher, his childish behaviour of embarrassing Emily and reading out loud what the note had said is poor classroom management. Several studies show that being exposed to teacher bullying can adversely affect a child's physical and mental health, participation in education and working life, and sense of well-being in adulthood. Gusfrey 2022. This is evident in the case study, Mr. Robinson reading out loud the note in front of the class. Knowing that Emily would be affected by this is bullying. This has an effect on Emily's mental health and her participation in her education. Emily didn't want to return back to school, especially not back to Mr. Robinson's class. This in turn would have an impact on her education. When thinking about having to return back to school, Emily feels ill and starts to sweat. This is a sign that it has started to impact her mental health. Teachers have a duty of care towards students, and in this case study, Emily's duty of care at school is not sufficiently being met. The consequence of Samantha passing a note in the classroom was that Mr. Robinson took the note from Emily and read it out loud. This is inexplicable classroom management. Mr. Robinson should have asked who was involved and dealt with the matter after class, thus having a group consequence for the behaviour. Mr. Robinson has not made his classroom to be a happy, safe, and welcoming learning environment. The students are fearful of him. Also, Mr. Robinson is stern and has rules set in place. He should also have a reward system in place. That way, students have an incentive for their good behaviour. Margetts 2023. In the case study, Emily said that she was fearful not only of school, but Mr. Robinson, and having to return to his class. Having to return to that environment makes her feel ill. No person should ever feel this way. Social development is a learning values, knowledge, and skills that enable children to relate to others. Supporting social development, BU, no date. After Emily was embarrassed in front of her peers and friends, she no longer wanted to attend school, especially Mr. Robinson's class. This negative impact on Emily has affected her social development. Instead of associating school with learning and friendships, now Emily feels ill and is anxious to be at school. According to the New South Wales Department of Education, schools and teachers should promote a sense of belonging. Simple guide to supporting student social and emotional well-being, no date. And that environments need to be created so that all students feel valued and supported by staff and peers. Simple guide to supporting student social and emotional well-being, no date. It also states there is a zero tolerance towards bullying. Simple guide to supporting student social and emotional well-being, no date. and that they must provide many opportunities for positive peer interactions and school staff. Simple guide to supporting student social and emotional well-being. I want you to pause and reflect on the case study and the extract I just read out and answer these questions in your head. Does the way Mr. Robinson acted create a feeling towards Emily that she is valued and supported? Although Emily, Samantha, and Ethan did the wrong thing by passing a note around, was it the correct way for Mr. Robinson to react? As a pre-service teacher, if this incident was to happen in your classroom, how would you react? What would you do differently?
As you know, classical conditioning is a concept in behavioral psychology. It can result in learning of involuntary emotional or physiological responses, such as fear, increased muscle tension, salivation, or sweating, in response to the previous neutral stimulus. In the given situation, Emily was experiencing a great deal of discomfort and humiliation, especially since Mr. Robinson chose to read the letter aloud to the entire class. Through this experience, Emily gained insight to the potential consequences of her actions and how they may affect her emotions in similar situations involving reading, writing, or passing notes in the future. Classical conditioning, the process of learning, does not always result in immediate or direct response to a specific cue. Instead, it involves establishing a probabilistic relationship between various stimuli. This means that the situation evoked a reaction in Emily, leading her to feel embarrassed and unwell due to the way Mr. Robinson handled it. This highlights the complexity of the psychological and emotional responses involved in classical conditioning. Mr. Robinson's handling of the situation was very immature, as it made one of his students feel humiliated and not want to be in his class. He could see how embarrassed Emily felt as she ran off and didn't come back to class. After the situation, Mr. Robinson may have realised that this wasn't the best way to handle it. He may have felt embarrassed himself, and he also interrupted the whole class, even though Samantha and Emily were the only ones not doing their problem of the day. In the future, he may handle the situation differently so that only the people involved are the ones to hear about it. A good education depends not only on excellent teachers and resources, but also effective learning strategies. By establishing a reasonable stimulus-response connection, we can help students develop good learning habits and correct their bad behaviours by getting rid of their existing abnormal conditioned reflexes or creating new ones. Mr. Robinson was trying to correct their bad behaviour by taking the note and reading it aloud to everyone in the class. However, he could have asked to see Emily and who wrote the note after class to discuss it and could have given them a punishment. The circumstances involving Emily led to her abrupt departure due to feeling uncomfortable, causing her to miss Mr. Robinson's classes for a week. Concerned about her well-being, Mr. Robinson asked her parents to intervene, which they were unaware of the incident that had occurred. It is important that Emily has taken this situation as a learning experience and acknowledged the importance of promptly addressing such matters. Delaying the handling of situations can result in them escalating and attracting more attention and involvement from others. Classical conditioning involves predicting future events that we don't control, and it can be used for skill for survival. For instance, Emily experienced an uncomfortable feeling that made her not want to go back to Mr. Robinson's classes, prompting him to get her parents involved. This response can help her in the future as she knows the feeling and can respond to similar situations. This process is called generalization. The outcomes being reported, which can broadly summarize as social development, has sparked significant interest among education practitioners. This is due to the growing recognition of the importance of educational environments that foster both well-being and learning. Emily had an unhealthy learning environment as Mr. Robinson had very strict rules and was making the children feel very tense the whole time they were in class. As well as what happened by Emily not going to school and not attending Mr. Robinson's classes can jeopardize her social development in the future. Now it's your turn. Reflect on the question. What are some different ways Emily could have done to handle the situation better?
Scan the QR code and add your response.
Hello, I'm Shanika, and I will be discussing the practical ways that behavioural theory and strategies can be used in a classroom setting. I will be mainly focusing on classical conditioning and positive reinforcement for this presentation. We will work through the application of these theories in the classroom, reflect on a given scenario activity, and discuss further behaviourist approaches to learning. Now that we have discussed the case study and its relevant learning theories, we can begin to elaborate on the practical ways that we can utilise them in a classroom setting. To create a positive learning experience for students, it is crucial to model positive behaviours by supporting learners opposed to punishing them, as we have seen with Mr. Robinson in our case study. Through incorporating classical conditioning techniques in the classroom, we can create positive associations with our learning environment by helping to enhance motivation, improve focus and concentration, and having consistent expectations. Let's take a quick look at how Jim uses a neutral stimulus to create a natural response through repeated pairings. Classical conditioning, as demonstrated in our case study, can also be used to create negative associations towards a neutral stimulus if it is repeatedly paired with negative experiences that evoke fear and anxiety. For the following scenario, let's consider how classical conditioning and other behavioral approaches can work to create more positive experiences in the classroom and towards student learning. Let's have a look now at a classroom setting scenario. Joseph is a Year 9 student who has a negative attitude towards his English class, particularly when it comes to essay writing, and he often feels frustrated and anxious during this class. The teacher often rushes through learning content and does not offer much opportunity for students to ask questions. I would like you now to reflect just for a couple of minutes on what behavioural techniques you might utilise in this situation. We've provided a QR code as a link to the Padlet, so if you could jot down just one or two practical ways that you could help Joseph to create a more positive association with his English class, that would be great, and we can use it later on as well for referencing. Okay, so hopefully by now we've been able to jot down a couple of ideas. Now we can talk about the practical behavioural approaches that we might use for Joseph. Using classical conditioning strategies combined with other behavioural approaches such as classroom management and positive reinforcement can significantly impact the emotional response that a student has towards their classroom environment and learning. Some practical behavioural approaches for Joseph could include using classical conditioning by offering a neutral stimuli that he enjoys, such as a song or a short video clip from a movie he might like, before or after essay writing to form a positive association between the two. Other behavioural strategies, such as positive reinforcement, can be significantly beneficial for student engagement in the classroom. However, to be effective, positive behaviour reinforcement must be contingent on the behaviour to be reinforced, clearly specific to the behaviour being reinforced, and to be believable. Further approaches for creating an inclusive and positive classroom environment for students can include utilising classroom management strategies. For example, personalised learning can be significantly motivating by appealing to students' particular likes and interests, also by differentiating tasks and homework to be suitable for different learning styles. Social development approaches to learning, like making real-world connections to content and encouraging peer and group work, can be very beneficial for an inclusive classroom environment.